Hey, what's up, audience? How's it crack-lacking? Just gonna core through another one. Real quick, I want to clarify this idea, which is quite important to realize of how the reality works. And I want to look at this concept that sometimes people say that physical reality is not real, right? And what does it actually mean? The words that they use and what the meaning is behind it. Because sometimes someone asks the question and someone else answers it, but in whatever way, um, if you mean by this that it's not real, okay, let me just rephrase that. The reason it's not real is because it's not film film reel with double E, real, the film reel. It's a screen. It's a screen. It's a virtual reality. It's a screen. It's tangible, but it's not real. It is tangible, but it's not real. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can sense it with all your sensory organs, right? And that's why sometimes people quote Jesus and say, "Don't believe your eyes, don't believe your physical eyes, don't believe." And what does that mean? It means that if you start believing what you see, something comes up into your reality. Oh, that's the way it works, and you believe that, then that's the way it's going to keep on working. But you don't believe. I'm gonna get to this. What you do believe. You don't believe in anything. Actually, you don't believe in anything. If you see something happening in this world, and you say, "All right, that's the screen. That's the screen. That's the screen of the reality." But the film is not the screen. If I try to change the screen, I get into all sorts of nonsensical manipulations. You can't change it. But when you see the screen that you don't like, there's a movie playing on the screen that you don't like. All you gotta do is just change the film. Now we're getting to the film now. But the way the consciousness work is that first you got to erase that film. That's your beliefs. You got to erase it, and as I call it, zero it out. You got to zero it out to compassion, to peace. Because at first, when you see something you don't like, there's going to be certain emotional response. You're going to have to not to bury that emotional response, not to express it in anger or whatever, but to just zero it out. Like really not have that emotional response to be completely zeroed out, that you do not have that emotional response anymore if that event happens again. That's the first thing. You erase the film. The second, which is, by the way, it's about the compassion, right? That's the feminine strength. And if I were to go a little bit deeper into this, when you erase the film, right? What would like you may end up in a state of compassion. You may see all these films around you still happening, these worlds, these other worlds are still happening, but you're not moved by it anymore. You're like, okay, you don't believe it because you see, like, okay, that's the past. That's just the projection, and now it's just showing. But because of the compassion bubble, you're not really moved by it. Okay, this is why the compassion and empathy is not the same, it's different. Empathy is something that you connect to another world, and so then basically you engage into, okay, whatever is in my world, in their world, we're gonna mix it. And it's not a good idea because and sometimes people, this helper syndrome is that people, oh, I want to help pull them out of this, and then they crash and burn themselves because you don't use empathy like that at all. Use empathy only when you live in your own world and somebody else lives in or end up living in the same world or hang out with you long enough in a state of compassion that they develop their own. Then only then you let in deep inside, um, and so then you have uh, that empathetic connection. Just basically, whatever's happening to you happens to me. Whatever happens to me happens to you on an emotional level. Okay, so but you don't do that with just anybody. That's why empathy has to be super, super, super exclusive. But compassion is for everybody. Okay? Trust me, it's a big, big lesson. You can be a compassionate for to everybody. It doesn't require anything out of you. It just requires you to zero it out, be in a state of peace, and other people are going to be affected by it. Also, you're going to be protected from all sorts of spells, which is what? The spells, thoughts. They're coming into your bubble and making you think the things that you don't want to think from the hive mind. The compassion protects all of that. It erases all of the previous films and creates that bubble. But now, the next phase, that's where the power comes in, or the wisdom. You've got to create it, what you do want to see. So then you got to write on that film of what you want to see. And the way you do it is by tuning in to the feelings that you desire inside of you, and imagining what kind of form you would like it to take. Daydreaming, lucid dreaming, you know, imagination. That is something that we ought to spend a lot of time to, because that's what's real. So somebody asked me the question, like, do you believe in news? I said, of course I don't believe in news. It's like, but because it's all could be made up. Why would I believe it? And then they asked me what I do believe, and then I really looked at it, and then it's kind of realized that, holy shit, like, the only thing that I believe is my imagination. That's the only thing that's worth believing, because I intentionally create something. I burn that on that reel when I first time experiencing and projecting that reality. Then that will come into this reality and be projected in the physical screen. Okay? And that's the story. And I made other videos and using other metaphors, but now in this case I'm using the film metaphor. And hopefully it clarifies, and because sometimes people talk about this like for hours and they're discussing things, and it's like, no, just first of all, before any kind of discussion, before any kind of argument, define your definitions, meanings, and words. It's the first thing that you got to do, because you're gonna end up just saying words but not really communicating at all. And sometimes people make shit up and say like, well, it's not real because of this, it's not real because of this, and I'm listening to this and I'm like, man, do you even look at it, bro? Just look at it, and you'll see it. I know that it may not be easy because when you have your brain conditioned for so long, it may not be easy for you to see how your imagination, how your internal energy and states determine the screen that you see outside. But you got to see it. You got to see it. You got to test it. You got to try it. You got to see it. How many fucking times you need to see it? It doesn't matter. How many times would you need to see it for you to think that is true? That the only thing that you should believe is whatever you imagine. Beliefs do not serve. If you again, like, you go backwards. If you believe what you see outside, you freeze yourself into that cycle. So like, oh, that's the way it works, or that's the way I am, or whatever. I say, okay, how about fuck all that and say, what do you desire? What do you want it to be? And imagine that, feel that, dream about that, daydream about that, and enjoy it. And then with time, you're gonna see. With time, you're gonna see once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. At first, you say, like, wow, that's just coincidence, that's a coincidence, coincidence. But when it keeps on happening and happening and happening and happening, eventually you're going to have to say that that's how reality works. Not because I said so, because you observe it to be the case. Okay? Now, I also have to say something. It appears to be so, because everything I'm talking about is I've witnessed it and I saw it, and that's why I speak with confidence that that's the way it works. And perhaps there could be much deeper investigation done to see much more detail, but that's the way it appears to me now. Is that imagination is great, but there's a difference between imagination and vision. There's a difference between visualization, imagination, and vision. Visualization, it's very like specific and almost mechanical things. Okay, I want this. I want to see a triangle in my head. In my mind, my mind's eye, and you see a triangle. Okay, then you can give it the color, and so everything has to be very precise when you visualize it, right? Imagination is something that, for example, when you visualize an apple, imagination is that thing that fills all the textures inside the apple, because you may imagine the apple and it may have a stalk, it may have a leaf, and it may have some colors there, and it's like, did you ask for it? No, you didn't ask for it. That was filled in for you, and that's the power of imagination. Okay, there's just a little bit guidance. Visualization just guides, gives you like a frame, and then imagination fills in those details. Okay, imagination is more automatic than visualization. Then it goes into something that you may call a vision, when you were not deliberately doing anything. Let's say you've been imagining this thing and over and over and over again and enjoying it, and then suddenly one day you have like a super vivid dream, which is obviously, you can see that it's not a dream anymore, because the vividness was so real that you say like, whoa. And then you can say, okay, that was the vision. Okay, and when anything is raised to a vision, that is guaranteed to come into the physical reality in some sort of shape or form. Okay, I could share some personal examples, but they're not really needed. You could but anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm inviting you to the real world. The real meaning the film reel. You got to burn the film reel for it, to happen. And it's not, there's certain things that you got to do with your intention. Like I said, attention, that's how you handle your emotions, zero it out. Intention, that's how you request for a specific desire to be realized in your imagination or vision, right? Or become a vision. That's intention. That's what you got to do. And then there is action. In the physical world, you gotta take action. So you gotta go there. Just the practical fucking things that everybody has to do. You take action, and you got to do those things. You cannot skip that. Because another fucking thing that people say, well, there's nothing to do, so then they do nothing. That's no. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean there's nothing to do. That's not what there's nothing to do means. All it means that you do not required to do anything for you to feel content. That's all it means. And that's what people say, oh, there's nothing to do. I said, don't do anything. No, you don't have to do anything to feel content. And you can obviously, as I talked about, to zero it out, your emotions, go to the compassion. You can do that, and you'll see it's like, oh yeah, I don't have to do anything to feel content. And in that sense, there's nothing to do in order to fix your emotions. Yes, there's nothing to do. And of course, most people live their lives doing things to fix their emotions. So in that sense, yeah, there's nothing to do to fix your emotions. Let's be more fucking specific. Don't confuse people like that. Okay? So now, we resolved this nothing to do thing. Okay? Of course, now I also reframe this thing and say, whatever you're going to do, it's not for the contentment, it's for thriving. I separate those two. First of all, you cannot thrive unless you have contentment. That's the first thing. But then you say, well, if I have a contentment, then that's it. I'm just going to sit on my ass and do nothing. Because now I don't have to do anything in the world that I used to do. I used to do things to make myself feel better. But now I feel good without no reason. So then that's it. My life is over. You know? No, that's just the beginning. So that's why a lot of people discover that peace, that state is like, oh shit, yeah. And then the life is over. No, the life is not over. It's just the beginning. You found the contentment, which is great. Now you can zero out the emotions and be content. That's just the first part, compassion. You just deleted all those movies that you didn't like. But now you got to create a new one. I also have to say that this compassion thing is a feminine, and then this power of, wisdom is a masculine thing. But if this could be shared, and a woman's responsibility I'm talking about, of course, soul, is to zero things out, peace, to always bring to the compassion, compassion. That's because that's what unifies things and deletes the spells and doesn't allow the spells to come in that makes bad thoughts happen and bad events happen, right? It's protective. That's why it's like very motherly and very protective. That's something that is real protection, and that's the real feminine power, and that's actually the only real feminine power that for some reason fucking Matrix is afraid of it because it will not fucking work. That to me, the woman of compassion isn't actually powerful woman. Why is she powerful? Because she silences the spells with compassion. She zeroes it out, everything. So she's very protective in that sense, with that energy, right? But there's something that she can do. Well, at least I shouldn't say her, but the compassionate state, something we can do, and that is to create a new reality, and also to permanently destroy a certain type of structures of consciousness. For that you need power. Okay? There's a protection, compassion, and there's power. Power, like compassion, protects you from all this negative or bad energies, but those energies are still there. Power is something that when you face those bad energies and you dissolve or just permanently destroy them, and there's something changes inside of you, and that's the man's job. And this is why I said the man's job in all those three levels, we have to be alchemist, magician, well, alchemy, magic, and mind. And on the feminine side, devotion, obedience, and care. And if you got those all in the perfect way, you would have something amazing going on. So when a man does not need to zero things out and things are kind of peaceful, because he has a woman who is emanating peace, the aura of peace, can focus more on power, which is what he wants to create, and he dreams the reality that is more and more kind of better and cozy for her. So she caters to him, and he dreams for her, so she could have, and then we go into the thriving thing. When there's a contentment, and there's a right polarity between the two, after that there is this thriving thing that I call it. And a thriving thing is not just being content and doing nothing. Thriving is actually changing reality itself, is dreaming whatever you desire to be the case. Okay? And basically, men are mostly dreamers, and the women are mostly the enjoyers of it. And then, there's this. Anyway. Okay? And obviously, it would be good to ask a question like, what is true power? Not ego, not status. Because sometimes, people are afraid of true power because they confuse it with ego. They think that all power is evil, but it's not. And it's not visible. People just feel very nervous around the people of true power. The person of true power may not have status in the world, whatever, but people with a lot of ego are just naturally scared of that energy. And so true power is not forceful dominance. That's not true power. That is already you, because you're not powerful. You have to, get in and micromanage the situation and be controlling. That's not power. Not saying that there's certain things that has to be controlled in life in the physical reality, of course, but not out of the insecurity. Okay? Anyway, this video was about the reel, the film reel. And if you make that change of not believing your eyes and your senses, in the sense that that's just already of the past, it's not for you to believe it, it's just to enjoy it, or if there's a reaction to it, zero it out. That's all this physical reality is for, is to enjoy the sensation. If you spend your day just sensing and enjoying things, like, I'm trying to say, your focus is on enjoyment, you'll get what this screen is for. It's for enjoyment. It's a screen. But if you see something you don't like on that screen, don't try to paint on that screen, because you're just going to make a mess. Just change the film. Okay? And practically you can see something, for example, wait a second, but look, this is how I feel inside, but the reality showed me that it's not like that, so what the fuck, am I supposed to ignore it? Pretty much. Just zero it out, I should say, and believe of what you desire. That's real. Of course, your soul desire. I'm not talking about ego tantrums. Like, for example, if something happens, for example, and you want vengeance, okay, that's ego. But the soul may desire, instead of having a revenge, the soul may desire to create something from that lesson, create something new that the soul enjoys. And I'm absolutely certain that we're here to fulfill our soul desires. But we cannot fulfill our soul desires until we find that base of that that compassionate state. So you cannot jump, you cannot skip this. You see something you don't like, it's like, well, I'm just gonna change it. No, you can't do that. You see something you don't like, there is emotional reaction. You've got to zero that bitch out. And then when you're at the zero point, then you imagine whatever you want to imagine. And it will be easy for you to do so, and you won't be in a conflict. Okay? What else can I say about this? Well, this is just like consciousness. This is the way the consciousness works. And honestly, like, if you study your own consciousness, like even for a year, not through whatever else telling you, you don't study consciousness by reading a book. You don't do that. You study consciousness by experimenting, exploring your states, everything. You explore the consciousness. You can do that, right? See for yourself, experience for yourself. See what people are talking about that state. I mean, sometimes, anyway. Listen, if you do this, like, you can write your own fucking Bible. All the information is inside of you. The real information that you need to know. You don't need to read books. I've kind of stopped reading books. I mean, because I don't know, like, books are great to learn skills. So I watch videos and read books to learn skills. Those are great. I mean, because you do need to have your skills right in order to create what you want to create and play what you have created. You have to have skills. Okay? But not to read a book about consciousness. That's ridiculous. Unless you are going through something and you're experiencing the state, and then you say, what the fuck is this? And then you may look at some literature, it's like, oh, that's what they call it. All right, cool. Like maybe like that. But don't read it and say, oh, this is and then just make the shit up. No, you got to witness it directly. And usually when you witness it directly, it's so clear that it's like, holy shit, like, oh, I can write my own Bible. And this is why I don't know, man. I don't fucking see. Because look, whoever's going through this and exploring their own consciousness, only that person will understand the Bible. But they could actually write the Bible because everything is inside of them. So what is the point of a Bible? Because most people that they read it, they are not in these states of consciousness. They do not have that perspective where they see that the Bible is actually a consciousness manual. They still live in the belief systems, still lost, but they use Bible as a drug. They use Jesus as a drug. Jesus is not a drug. You can't keep on saying like, oh, give me Jesus on my daily dosage and I'll be fine. No, they're still using it as a drug because they still have the addictions, because they still have not broken through that thing. So it's a paradox. The only way you understand the Bible if you are containing everything from which the Bible can be written. So this is why I understand why sometimes in Taoist traditions, they would not write books, and people would say like, why would not write books? Because they knew that that's not the way. And if they did write books, it wasn't about what you're going to discover and what it is, and all these like beliefs. It would not installing the beliefs in you. It would just, you see what I'm trying to say? It would just tell you like, hey, look here, do this, or look here. That's, what I'm trying to say? It would be just like a consciousness manual of how to use it, but not what's in it. Does that make sense? Because you got to figure that shit out yourself, what's in it. You just need to know how to use it. And look, there is no fucking way. No, I don't even have to say it, but anyway. Okay, the physical reality is tangible, but it's not real. What's real is your imagination. The only thing that you want to believe is your imagination, because if you believe what's outside of you, it becomes static and it becomes kind of recorded. And as I said, like the heart of coal, you believe it's a wall around your heart, and you can't feel it because it's full of beliefs. There's, I say that we're not to create any beliefs, and we not to have any beliefs. If there are any beliefs, destroy the beliefs and never create a new one. That would be the first step to start living a life in the right direction. Okay. Then you say, how do you function without beliefs? Well, they kind of, all is left, it's your skills. You don't have beliefs about things, but there's skills. There are skills, the physical skills that you got to do, language to speak, like whatever, playing instrument. The skills are there. They're not beliefs anymore. They're just, you can call them habits, or whatever you call it. But it's just type of memory that is still there, that is functional. But it's not heart memory. It's just brain memory for your avatar to function. But there's no memory in your heart anymore. There's nothing recorded in your heart. It's pure. And so you got that purity in your heart, and then when there's a purity in the heart, the mind can shape that energy, that spirit, into something that is, real, because that's the direct experience of something's real. The vision that you see, imagination, vision, lucid dreaming, astral projection, out of body experiences, like all of these different states in a state of phase where you can actually create something. And there's actual real-time creation and experience. So you create, and sometimes when you create something, it might be in a certain way, certain feelings, but when it comes in the physical reality, things are not identical. It may be identical, but if they're not identical, you re-experience it again through this, already finished product. And so you get to experience it once in a direct experience, and then you get to experience on the screen. So you're like, you've enjoyed creating a movie, and now you enjoyed watching it. Okay. So there. That's the meaning of the real. The hints are in the words. Real, REEL. All right. Peace. See you next one.